Hello and welcome to Taking Hugh for Granted, the podcast in which two Hugh Grant enthusiasts watch all of his seminal works, including every single movie, his greatest TV shows, and even the student film he made at university. In this series, these Hugh Grant experts will look back at his career to create the definitive list of the greatest Hugh Grant productions ever made. I'm Diggory Waite, and I'm joined, as always, by my colleague and fellow Hugh Grant obsessive, Oscar Beardmore-Gray. Oscar, how the bloody hell are you doing today, mate?
I'm feeling a little emotional, Diggs. Feeling a little emotional because we've done 80 plus episodes. We spent countless hours, and people have been along for the ride all the way. And here we are, our top 10 Hugh Grant films ranked. It is emotional.
Yeah, mate. We were saying, I don't know if we said it last episode or whether we said it off air, but this is our magnum opus. This is our magnum opus. This is it. This is the culmination of 4 years of us watching every single film made by Hugh Grant. The lengths we've gone to, I mean, we won't go into it, but listen to some of our other episodes. You'll hear some of the lengths we've gone to. I mean, we've got mugs, for fuck's sake. We've got Oscar's holding up his Taking Hugh for Granted mug. I'm like, you can see in the background of my video if you're watching on YouTube, you can see some of the Hugh Grant memorabilia that we've got together over the years in the background. But this is it. This is the definitive top 10 list. And like I've said before, there is no one better placed to make this list than Oscar and I. We have actually done it. We have watched every single Hugh Grant film there is on the planet. Oscar, with 40 Hugh Grant films down, 10 to go, the top 10 Hugh Grant films. Oscar, how we rank these films? I think that people want to know that, who are coming to this, because they've skipped to the final episode. They've skipped to the top 10, and they'll want to know how we rank them.
Here's a fair question, Diggs. So we have each ranked every film out of 20. There are 4 categories. How much is Hugh in it? How good is Hugh? How sexy is Hugh? And then the quality of the film overall. So that's given us an overall score of 20 for each person. Add those together, it's 40, and come to this definitive list. Mm-hmm. And here we are, the top 10.
Here we go, the top 10 Hugh Grant films today. I mean, Oscar, let's waste no more time. Let's get into number 10.
Beginning the countdown of Hugh Grant's top 10 productions to date, it's The Gentleman.
Oscar, number 10 on the Hugh Grant top 10 films of all time list. Well, at least to date. Talk to me, your thoughts, please.
Diggs, I remember fondly watching this film together. We went to the cinema. I think it's actually the only film out of all the films we watched that we went together to the cinema to watch this film when it came out in 2019. It feels like a while ago now. It was actually the beginning of our journey. And I just remember we both walked out of it and thought, this is going to be a great podcast, because that was kind of at the very beginning, and we were like, there are a lot of weird films. And then we watched this one and we were like, it kind of confirmed to us that we were onto a good thing. What I would say about this film is that I think it's Hugh Grant at his very best. I really do. I think he's so funny in this film. And I just went onto YouTube last night, and I was kind of like trying to refresh my memory of some of these films. Obviously the top 10, I don't want to get anything wrong. And the first scene of this film is genius. It's absolutely genius. And like, it starts off with Hugh being like, Buenas tardes. And from that moment on, we know that we're in for a classic. And, Hugh's look, his accents, it was all something that we hadn't really seen before. And because like his character was very much a stereotype of someone he hates, which is like a kind of skeezy journalist or photojournalist, I guess just a tabloid photographer. I think that made it even better, because he was like, he embodied this character of people he's probably met along the way. So for that reason, I have nothing but good words to say about this movie.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Once again, and I think we're going to say this on this final top 10 a few times, actually, that it is a bit of very clever and witty casting. I love the fact that, he had his whole, the battle with the News of the World, the Leveson inquiry, all the anti-hacking stuff against the tabloids. And so to be playing this sniveling, conniving, evil little photojournalist, like you say, this rat journalist, it is part of what we like to call the Hugh Naissance. Hugh Grant sort of goes away for a while. Everyone knows him for the rom-coms, and he's sort of come back onto the scene with a lot of the films we'll talk about today, where he's funny, he's crazy. It's a Hugh Grant we'd never seen before, and this film like you say, it's Hugh Grant at his best. He's having so much fun in the role, and you're not going to come away from this film and not have had a good time.
I think for many people, this would be the first time that people would have seen Hugh with a different accent. Like most people up to this point, they do just imagine Hugh with his very posh RP accent. And so to hear him sort of, play a fucking game with me, Raymond. It's like, to hear that kind of thing. I just remember being in the cinema and people being in stitches about it. And I think that would be the general reaction even now, like people watching this film. And I love his look as well, with the kind of like, the stub, the weird like facial hair and the orange glasses. I just think it's brilliant. And it's by far the best Guy Ritchie film he's been in. Of course, he's been in a couple of others. And I think it's well deserving to be in the top 10.
At number 9, it's The Lady and the Highwayman.
Coming in at number 9 in our definitive ranking is The Lady and the Highwayman. I don't think many people would have heard of this film, Dig. So tell me why it is come in at number 9.
Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you are in for an absolute treat here. And this is exactly what me and Oscar were talking about. When we set out on this journey to watch all of Hugh Grant's films, you've obviously heard of your Bridget Joneses, your Notting Hills, your Love Actuallys. But this is the sort of thing, these hidden gems that we've plucked out of obscurity. No one would have heard of this film. Lady and the Highwayman, a TV movie, 1988. We watched this one together as well, actually. We watched it in your house, and we sat on the floor with our shoes off and our little socks, and we watched it. And honestly, it's so good. Hugh Grant plays this sort of like, it's like, I think Edwardian or something. And so it's like back in the day, Hugh Grant looks great. He's got this big bushy hair, like at the style of the time. And he plays this sort of like vigilante known as the Silver Blade, who
so cool.
He's so cool. He's like Batman, Zorro, Robin Hood character. It's the coolest character Hugh Grant has ever played. Like, he's swashbuckling and using his sword. There's a quote from it, because, he's constantly like stealing from the rich and giving to the poor and stuff. There's just this great bit where he stands up a stagecoach and he's like, "You are a leech." And that is now just a phrase that I constantly, when someone's upset me, I'm always like, "Oh, you are a leech."
And then you're like, "Do you know where that's from?" And they're like, "No."
Yeah. No, absolutely not. But honestly, this film is absolutely brilliant. And I know people are going to look at this, and if they look up The Lady and the Highwayman, they'll be like, "Oh my God, this looks terrible." Trust me when I say the film actually does a really good job of setting up the characters, setting up the plot lines, genuine intrigue, and of course there's some like camp, slapstick funniness that goes on and all that sort of stuff. But for what it is, this is so much fun. It's so cool. And like I say, there are genuine moments of drama where you're like, I'm actually intrigued about what's going to happen. This film is brilliant.
Diggs, I love your enthusiasm for this film. And I mean, I share the same enthusiasm. I just think that you're able to capture it in such a good way, and I love it. Yeah, you said it. You hit the nail on the head. He's kind of like this sort of Edwardian James Bond. Like, instead of guns, he's carrying like knives and samurai swords, and he's just like he just goes around beating people up, and it's sick. And like you said it perfectly. He's like a mix of Robin Hood and Zorro and Batman. And I would just encourage people, if you're a new Hugh Grant fan, you might have a bit of snobbery towards, and I think we all do, don't we? We're all millennials, Gen Z. Maybe we have a bit of snobbery towards films made pre-1990. And, I think when we went into it, we were also a bit like, this is probably going to be shit. Yeah. But we really found the opposite. And I would encourage people to look beyond the cover of the DVD and probably not the DVD, but, wherever you're watching this film, and give it a go.
Competing for 8th and 7th place will be The Lair of the White Worm and Notting Hill.
Okay, Oscar, we have a two-way tie in our ranking system. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen at home, there has been ties that have come up, and so we have to debate them on screen, on the mic for you, and this is no different. We have, coming in for number 8 and number 7 of the top 10 Hugh Grant films to date, we have Notting Hill, 1999, and The Lair of the White Worm, 1988. Another film from the 80s. Oscar, take it away.
I feel like there will be some fans out there who've just taken a short intake of breath to hear that Notting Hill is not further up. So I apologize to those out there. But for loyal listeners, they will know that there's been some deal of skepticism about the positioning of Notting Hill and whether we actually think it's great or not. I think that it is a very good film and definitely deserves to be in the top 10. But I think that 7th or 8th is about right. Like, I don't think it goes much higher than that. I think it's got some, that we won't discuss it all here, but we have discussed its flaws in great detail. I think where it is a very good film is that out of all of Hugh Grant's romantic comedies, I believe that it is the most romantic. Like, there is a genuine sweetness and cuddle yourself type romance in this film. Yeah. And the fact that it was kind of based off one of Richard Curtis's friends who was living his life as you do in Notting Hill in the 80s and actually fell in love with this kind of movie star who no one actually knows who it is. I don't think it's ever really been revealed. And then he created this film, and there is just something so like idyllic and sort of unbelievable about the love story, but that's sort of what you want a romantic comedy to do. And I think it was cast well, and Julia Roberts was the superstar of the time. As time goes on, and my less critical hat has come off, I feel more affinity towards Notting Hill.
I think that's a very good way of putting it. Yeah.
Do you want to discuss The Lair of the White Worm, because that is a totally different kettle of fish.
Well, I think yes. The Lair of the White Worm, 1988. This is a fever dream, and also the second episode that me and Oscar ever did. This film is the wackiest thing in the world. Unlike the film we've just spoken about, The Lady and the Highwayman, The Lair of the White Worm is a fucking terrible film. This is a really, really bad film. It's basically about Peter Capaldi, who I think is some student, archaeologist or something, and they uncover this like the skull of a worm that gives people these like psychedelic trances, and Hugh Grant obviously plays a lord, classic, and it's once again one of those Hugh Grant early films where his early career, he always played lords. There was always country houses, but also there was a lot of sex in it. This film weirdly has a lot of sex in it. There's the villain, Lady Sylvia Marsh. She is driving along the road at one point. She's this evil vampiric character, and she stops this schoolboy. Do you remember this bit? She stops, yes. He pulls up beside this schoolboy, and he's this scout kid, and he's can't be older than 13, and she's like, oh, hop in my car, I'll give you a ride because it's raining and stuff. And then during this car journey, she's being touching his leg and brings him back to his lair, and then puts him in the bath and rubs stuff all over it, and then eventually gets her fangs out and bites his dick off. This film is completely insane. Two women are fighting on the floor at one point, and Hugh Grant's pen gets erect, gets turned on. I don't know how to explain that to you any other way than you've got to just watch it. At the end, Lady Sylvia Marsh, the evil person, captures this woman who's been getting with Hugh Grant, and she tries to have sex with her with a dildo, and then the worm comes out, and Hugh Grant kills a vampire with a sword, and Peter Capaldi throws a grenade down the worm's mouth. This is the kind of film we're talking about. The thing is, it's so much fun. It's a bad film, but it's so much fun to watch. Hugh Grant is crazy in it, and that's why this film is so high up the list. It's just one of those gems that you watch, and you're like, I can't believe what I've just seen. I have to watch it again. And that's why this is where it is.
I love every time I got used to in this podcast nowadays when you go, oh God, it's like when you realize that you probably shouldn't share what you're about to share, but you got to anyway.
I've got to.
Yeah, I love that. I'm getting vivid memories and flashbacks to this movie because I haven't watched it since we watched it. So that's a good long time since I've seen it. But I was watching some of those scenes this morning, and the erect pen is is hilarious. It's brilliant.
It's bizarre.
So I just think that for all the reasons you've just reeled off there, I think The Lair of the White Worm has got to be above Notting Hill.
I agree, mate. I completely agree. I mean, What I would say about Notting Hill, and I really would say this as well, and what you just said there is so sweet. It is the most romantic of Hugh Grant's films. And actually, I've never heard you say that before, and I think that's actually the perfect way to put it. And when we'd sometimes talk about in other films that he's done, the rom and the com and how much one outweighs the other and all that sort of stuff. But the romantic side of it is really sweet, and it really does come through. So I think you're absolutely right. The film sort of hinges on Hugh Grant being a respectful character. I mean, one of the things he does is when she says, I want to be left alone, he leaves her alone, and that's why they sort of miss each other and they don't realise they want to get with each other. If he'd been a bastard and not gone with her wishes and gone and like tried to get with her in the middle of the night, you know, who knows what would have happened. Basically, Hugh Grant's a nice guy. He wears a collared shirt like no one else. And it's a really, really romantic film. So
Yes.
it does deserve its plaudits.
And it makes like London seem like the nicest place in the entire world, and everyone could just live in Notting Hill. And the nice guy wins.
And the
Like,
nice guy wins.
I feel like in a lot of his other rom-coms, he's playing a bastard. So it's quite nice to see the nice guy win.
But The Lair of the White Worm is just too much fun. So for
Too
me,
much fun.
I agree with you. It has to be number 7, and Notting Hill has to be number 8.
Facing off for 6th, 5th and 4th place will be Four Weddings and a Funeral, A Very English Scandal, and Maurice.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have another tie, but this time it's 3-way. We have Four Weddings and a Funeral, 1994, A Very English Scandal, 2018, and Maurice, 1987. Oscar, your thoughts on any and all of those, please.
Oh my gosh, that's a monumental task.
Yeah.
Having just said that the nice guy never wins, I guess in Four Weddings he sort of does too, although I'm not sure I'd call him a nice guy, just call him a sort of bumbling idiot. The bumbling idiot wins.
And he can be a bit of a prick in that film.
Yeah, he is a bit of a prick as well.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really tough. I mean, where to start? I mean, sometimes I feel a little bit like, while I do feel I am the authority to talk on most Hugh Grant films at this point, Four Weddings is still one I feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about, because it's so like seminal in a certain generation. I think like basically my parents' generation. Like this was the film that I feel like they all loved and they all talked about, because it kind of, you know, it reminded them of their youth and their uni days, etc., etc. So I do feel a little bit insecure about talking about this film. I still struggle to really love it, and I don't think that will come as a surprise to many listeners. Actually, if you listened to this before, and I think that Maurice gets up there so high in this list because of the piece of work it was at the time. Where Hugh is playing a gay character who falls in love with Maurice. He's Clive Durham, who's kind of, I guess, sort of aristocratic university student, and he starts this relationship. And there weren't that many films like this at the time, and you know, there's this whole kind of, I guess, undertones discussion about like whether homosexuality should be allowed. There's like weird, like hypnotic scenes where Maurice they try and like get him to, I guess, you know, try and fix him. So there's a whole load of subjects that are touched on in that film, which make it quite an important work. That being said, it is a little slow at times. So
it does lag in the middle.
I mean, A Very English Scandal as well is, I guess, similar to Maurice in some ways, where Hugh is playing another gay character in Jeremy Thorpe. It was quite different for Hugh, wasn't it? Where he was very used to obviously playing the big Hollywood role, and he was phoned up and said, you know, you want to play TV? And Hugh was like, I don't think TV's for me. But he saw the script, thought it was so brilliant, and he's so good in that. He's so good. It's so reptilian, and he I think is the best character he embodies out of any film he's ever been in, because, you know, like, it's easy to play someone we don't know who he's like. It's easy to play someone like Phoenix Buchanan. He's a made-up character. We don't know how he's meant to be played, but people will know what Jeremy Thorpe was like. And so when you play someone else, it's got to be spot on. Otherwise, people are going to absolutely kill you for it. So I know you agree with me. He was absolutely brilliant in that TV movie. So if I had to put these in order, at the top I would put A Very English Scandal. Then I would put Four Weddings and a Funeral, and then I would put Maurice.
I think I have to agree with you, and I'm not just saying that. I think what we'll put in sixth place, basically, Maurice. I think this film is it's very important because people think that Four Weddings and a Funeral was Hugh's standout and breakout film, but actually it was Maurice. This was a James Ivory production, and it is just like the one we talked about last episode, The Remains of the Day. This is a film that marinates in your brain. You think about it a bit more. It's a serious film. It's really good. Hugh Grant in it looks amazing. He's like this student at Cambridge. He looks like, you know, what I think kids thirst about Timothée Chalamet about now. And there's this particular scene, the wicker chair scene, where his character Clive Durham and James Wilby's character Maurice are like, it's like their simmering love for each other is just about to. You feel like they're about to kiss, and like one of them sat on this wicker chair, and like it's making all this absolute racket, but it's just this simmering like tension and all this stuff going on. It's so amazing, and honestly, like I say, Hugh looks amazing, and there's a GIF online that just almost shares all the time about how good he looks in this film. Like he looks amazing. Then he grows this mustache in his face in the second half, and he looks fucking terrible, and it kind of ruins everything. But this is because his character, which is really interesting, sort of turns his back on homosexuality. I mean, it's too dangerous. Like people in the film get locked up for it, all that sort of stuff. So he gets a beard, a wife, and I think he gets a literal beard, his mustache, to sort of show as a sort of allegory or metaphor for him being like, no, I'm going to deny who I really am. It's a really good film in that way. And like I said, came out in the 80s in the midst of the AIDS crisis. And I think in the UK, it didn't do that well. And people think it's because they were trying to be like, we can't be seen to encourage this. So, you know what? Fair play to Hugh Grant. He said since he just saw it as a job. But this film does hold some weight for a lot of people. And that was no less shown when Hugh went to the LGBTQ plus film festival and they talked about this film and loads of people came up and said it was really good. So I think it's very deserving to be in the top 10. And then we have Four Weddings and a Funeral. Like you, Oscar, I feel, you know, some Andy McDowell in the film, I don't think her characters are like amazing, which is unfortunate. She's not that fleshed out, but Hugh Grant's really funny. It was really important to his career. So I think that deserves to be where it is. And oh my word, A Very English Scandal is just fantastic. It is 3 episodes of Hugh Grant doing some incredible acting, embodying Jeremy Thorpe, the MP, really well. And I spoke to Synopsis Simon, who you've been hearing do the little links in between these, and he said he interviewed Jeremy Thorpe. When he
really,
yeah,
actually, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and he was like, listen, I think he knew Jeremy, like he spoke to Jeremy Thorpe a bit, and he was like, Hugh Grant has done an incredible, not impersonation, he said this, embodiment. That's the word he used. Like, and the show has it's a very serious subject, you know. Jeremy Thorpe, this MP, has homosexual relations with this guy Norman Scott, played by Ben Whishaw, brilliantly, and he plans to kill him because he's like, well, this is a nightmare. This guy's going to tell the world my secret, and it's illegal to be gay. So it's a serious show, but there are moments of light which it deals with really well, but that never takes over and makes the whole thing a farce. It's a really, really, really clever screenplay written by Russell T Davies, and it's really well acted. So I think it deserves to be top of that list in number 4.
Well, I think Hugh called it himself, like, it is a bit of a black comedy in some ways. And it's easy to forget that it is definitely got some very serious subject matter, but also some comedic elements to it, which I think also add to it. And there was a brilliant screenplay, and Hugh was the perfect person to play that. Diggs, yeah. I think we're happy with this final decision, aren't we? I mean,
yeah,
I think you put it well. Like, Four Weddings has got to be in the top 10. It's, you know, it whether we love it or we don't love it that much, it's the bedrock of his career. There's no doubt about it. It is the bedrock of his career. Yeah. People still come up to him in the street, probably now, and say, I love Charles from Four Weddings and a Funeral. They picture the floppy hair. They picture that like morning suit wedding coat that he wears. Yeah. I think Maurice deserves to be in there because I think, again, it's one of those films that over time has got a cult following. Like, I know people message us, like, out of all the films that Hugh's done, lots of people message us about Maurice, which is interesting. So I think that says something for itself. But I think we have chosen the right film / screenplay to come up and top here out of these 3 in A Very English Scandal. It's so watchable. I think out of all of these, it's the one that you got to go stick on. Like, it's so good. I love it.
At number 3 in Hugh Grant's greatest ever films is Paddington 2.
Right, Diggs. We're into the top 3. Can you believe it? Top 3.
Wow, we're here.
All Hugh Grant films. I'm speechless. I really am. I think a very deserving number 3. Little drum roll, please. It's Paddington 2.
I mean, this film is held the record for being 100% on Rotten Tomatoes for the first film ever to do that. I think held the record. I don't know if it still has that now. I think some fucking shit has voted it down, but essentially, I think it held the 100% for ages and was the only film to do so. This film, I am tickled the deepest shade of shrimp to be able to talk about this film and Phoenix Buchanan, which it's just, again, this is what we mentioned up top with The Gentleman. Such clever casting. They came to Hugh Grant and they said, we want someone to play. The villain of Paddington 2 is a washed up old actor who used to be good and now does dog commercials. And they went, Hugh Grant, we thought of you immediately. Please take the role. And Hugh takes it with both hands. He is so self-deprecating. He is so funny. But he also has, and this is why I think it's genuinely a great performance, he has this level of malice when he's sometimes, even in that first scene where they're at the fairground and he's talking to Paddington, voiced by Wen Whishaw. He's being funny and delightful to everyone, but there's a few moments where you see his true intentions show. And you think to yourself, this guy's a bastard. And I think that's some of that amazing acting that we were talking about before. And also, he gets to show such a range here. This is why it's such a great film for the Hugh Renaissance, because people know him as this rom-com actor. But in this, obviously, as the actor, Phoenix Buchanan, he's constantly changing costumes. He plays a nun at one point, an incredibly attractive nun, apparently, according to one of the characters, one of the security guards. He's like, that beautiful nun with the amazing eyes is just like run past. And then he plays, sort of a homeless thief sort of character. He plays all these different things. And what I would say as well, Oscar, is for us, we have known Hugh Grant to have terrible accents down the years. He has done some awful accents. He can't seem to do an American one to save his life. He does a terrible sort of Polish-Italian one in one film where he plays Chopin. It's some of the accents have been dreadful. However, this is his accent redemption. He does Cockney. He does Russian. He does French. All of these amazing cast of characters. This is Hugh Grant showing what he can do, and he's flexing his muscles, and he's funny, and he's brilliant, and he's charming. He is brilliant in this film, and it's a great film.
Yes, Diggs, you've knocked that out of the park. I mean, I think that Paddington 2 was the moment where Hugh Grant cemented himself as a national treasure.
Yes,
I actually do. Like people saw this film, like I think it was a Christmas film, like kind of came out in the holiday season. People went to the cinema and they were blown away by Hugh's performance. Like they were, who can forget Hugh Grant's dancing at the end of this movie?
Oh,
it is good. People talk about it to this day. Like it is that moment. It's like an iconic moment of the 2010s. I swear. Like people were like Hugh Grant, Paddington 2. And like his dancing, like he's got his umbrellas, and he's like, I think it's so good because he just doesn't care. He's so happy to go along with what people think, like stereotype him, and he's sort of, maybe he's trying to dispel those stereotypes, but he also just, I don't think he's like at this point in his career really trying to prove anything to anyone, and that's what I love about it. He's so carefree. And because of that, he actually becomes more natural on screen. And that's why it's exciting to be a Hugh Grant fan, because I think there's more to come.
Exactly. He uses his stereotypes. That's what's so clever. That's what's so clever about this. Is he
about this man?
About this man. He's such a clever man. But it's true. The Gentleman. That the casting of that was genius. Him playing the sleazy journalist. In this, the casting is genius. The washed-up actor. In The Undoing, he plays this charming man who couldn't possibly kill anyone. Spoiler alert, he does. Like we all knew him as that lovely rom-com guy in that, and ultimately he does it. Like he uses his persona that we all know him and love him for, and that's what he's doing in the Hugh Renaissance. He is turning it on its head. And that is just someone who is using their career. They're in the shining golden era of their career where they can use they're using all of it in one. It's brilliant, and this film is brilliant, and Hugh Grant's brilliant, and this is fully deserving of number 3.
It's all brilliant. Everything's brilliant.
Yeah.
Taking second spot in Hugh Grant's best ever movies is Bridget Jones' Diary.
Oscar Beardmore-Gray. Taking the runner-up spot and the silver medal will be Bridget Jones's Diary 2001.
Little round of applause for Bridget Jones's Diary coming in at number 2.
Yes.
I think the reason why this film has to be at number 2 is because Daniel Cleaver is Hugh Grant's best character out of any character he plays.
Yes, it's true. I think I'm going to struggle to disagree with you.
Yeah, I just think it was the perfect character at the perfect time. And we've just spoken about, I guess, like the way that Hugh's perception in the public has changed over time. I think this one was so good because up until that point, most people had seen him in the Four Weddings type. Yeah. And when he was given this script, the screenwriters got a kick out of it and the public got a kick out of it because deep down we knew Hugh was a bastard.
Yeah, exactly.
We've all seen his mugshot. We knew there was a dark side to him.
Yeah.
That wasn't that bumbling Brit that we saw in Four Weddings and a Funeral. So to just kind of turn the dial up on that was what I think everyone wanted to see. Everyone knew that Hugh could be like that. And he's so like, he kind of loses a bit of weight for Daniel Cleaver. And he's so like evil looking and manipulative. He's nasty, but he's also still got that charm. And he's so hard to resist.
Yes.
And it's hard to resist watching Bridget Jones and loving it because he's so bloody good. And so good. Like we shit on in Colin Firth, and I know we shout on him most episodes we've been in, apart from the last one though, actually, to be fair.
Yeah.
But the combination, the trio, name me a more dynamic trio than Colin Firth, Renee Zellweger, and Hugh Grant in the Bridget Jones series. It's legendary.
It's legendary. And I mean, you just mentioned it there, though, but how, delectable and evil he is. His intro to this film alone is just so brilliant. It's Bridget is making all these resolutions to herself, and she's like, I will find a nice, sensible boyfriend and stop forming romantic attachments to any of the following: alcoholics, workaholics, sexaholics, commitment phobics, peeping toms, megalomaniacs, emotional fuckwits, or perverts. Will especially stop fantasizing about a particular person who embodies all of these things. The doors open. What you want, baby? I got it. It's Hugh Grant walking down, and you just think to yourself, there's no better introduction to a character, and like just nailing on the head that this guy is a complete bastard. And you can when you're watching it, you can just tell that Hugh Grant is having the best time. And finally, it feels like a snake has found its skin. He is finally in his proper suit, and every word that comes out of his mouth is a snake slithering out. It's just it's delectable, it's evil, and yet we all have that person in our life who we're like, God, you disgust me. I really want to have sex with you. That is him in this film, and it's so funny. It's so well written. And I will say it one time as well, like you said about that. I know, obviously, on this podcast, we're Hugh Grant fans first. We hate Colin Firth. He is good in this film. But the thing I will say, and I honestly will die on this hill, no film has ever cast a character as well as Renée Zellweger as Bridget Jones. I'm sorry. You can tell, there's probably some old farts who are like, oh, I don't know. No one could play Citizen Kane as well as Orson Welles. Shut up, you old fat idiot. Like, you are so boring and crap. Renée Zellweger has this thick Texan accent, which she totally loses, and you just can't imagine anyone else playing that role. She does it so well. I'm glad she's won an Oscar, because the fact that she didn't win an Oscar for this, I don't understand. It's because people look down on rom-coms. I think this is an incredible, incredible performance. Add to that Hugh Grant, add to that Colin Firth, add to that their fighting, which is obviously hilarious, and how fucking fit Hugh Grant looks in this film in that moment where he comes out of the water and he's got the cigarette in his mouth, and oh my God, this film is everything we could have asked for and more. I love it. I love Hugh. It deserves number second. It's great.
It just, it's Daisy. spot on. Take me back to 2001, 2. Like, you know, it was a golden era for films like this. And I mean, that brings us on very nicely to the film that is going to top our ranking, Diggs. We got to own it. We got to own the film that is top of Hugh Grant's films ever made, ever produced. Diggs, coming in at number 1. I'm giving this a big fanfare. Drum roll, please. This is 4 years of work, 80 episodes. It's come down to this. It is About a Boy.
Claiming the prestigious spot of the greatest production featuring Hugh Grant ever made, number 1 is About a Boy.
Wow. About a Boy. And you know what? In some ways, I think people will look at this film and go, hang on, what? Because you look at some of the huge productions, you know, the sort of majesty of the sort of like action thriller, which is The Gentleman. You look at Notting Hill, you know, well known, the romance, the beauty. People will look at, you know, For Weddings and a Funeral, what started it all. People will look at A Very English Scandal, this incredible biopic. People will look at Paddington 2. Wow, the Hugh Naissance really cemented in our faces. And we've gone About a Boy. I'll tell you why. It is the understated brilliance of About a Boy. And this film, may I remind people at home, this film is not a rom-com, but you will come away feeling like it is because it's so feel good. This film genuinely has all of the seriousness of Maurice. It has everything good about the evil nature of Daniel Cleaver from Bridget Jones's Diary in Hugh Grant's character. He's just as evil and just as despicable in this film. He talks about shagging his goddaughter, for God's sake. This film has everything good about the feel good of Notting Hill. The only thing it's missing is the shagging from the Lair of the White Worm. Otherwise, it is the perfect film. It is so wonderful. It's so brilliant. And this film, you know, I've been watching the Beckham documentary recently, and Rio.
Are you about to compare Hugh Grant to David Beckham?
I mean, name a bigger person, name a bigger star at the time. But Rio Ferdinand talked about it in that documentary. He was like, I can't do it. I can't do an impression of Rio Ferdinand. But Rio Ferdinand, the footballer, said David Beckham was dealing with mental health, and mental health wasn't a thing. He had nowhere to turn to. Now people always go, "Oh, how's your mental health doing?" But back then they weren't. This is 2002, similar sort of time, and this film deals with mental health in such a matter of fact, but also light-hearted but serious way. It is absolutely fantastic. This film, yes, it might not have too many bells and whistles, it might not have the biggest budget, it might not have explosions, it might not have this, that, and the other, but when you can't watch this film for me and come away and not think Hugh Grant was brilliant, Hugh Grant was hilarious, Hugh Grant was a little bit sexy, and that this film wasn't really, really bloody brilliant.
Diggs. I mean, you saved the best till last. That is, I fucking love it. I love you and I love it.
Yes, I love you too.
Yes, mate. That was class. I mean, I don't even know if I can follow that up at all. I mean, all I would say is that lots of people, when I talk about taking you for granted, do say that they love About a Boy, and for one weird reason, because they love that bit in About a Boy where he's sitting on the sofa talking about putting his life into half-an-hour segments.
Yes.
And wouldn't life be more simple if we could all just lie on the sofa and say, 30 minutes for a bath, 30 minutes to put my clothes on, 30 minutes to go outside. And like,
get my hair
exactly. And, all he does is sit on the sofa with a beer, and life is simple. I think you put the nail on the head, Diggs, where like this is a very simplistic film in some ways. It's it's quite raw in some ways, and we do see such a good character arc for Hugh Grant's character from someone who really is like, he's a loser. He's a loser, but he doesn't care. And in some ways, actually, probably his mental health is quite bad.
Yes,
but it's more obvious that the mental health is poor in the kid and his mum. But Hugh, it just shows that, like, I guess there's like this community feel when someone has a purpose that everyone can be sort of pulled along with him. So, and Nicholas Hoult is also fantastic in this film, and it's great. It's actually lovely that he's become such a big star and talks so fondly about this film. Apparently, he was too good looking, so they just gave him like the shittest hair and the shittest haircut. It is awful. It is terrible.
Yeah, poor kid.
And Hugh finishes the film on stage with his guitar, strumming along to "Killing Me Softly" with your song, which I just love it. It's so like sweet and heartfelt, and I think it's the most real. It's the most real out of these top 10 films. Like there's, like you say, there's no bells and whistles. It's like a simple screenplay that really tugs at your heartstrings. And the way you said that there is no rom-com, but it feels like a rom-com.
Yeah.
And that is the beauty of Hugh, because Hugh, that's his bread and butter. We all know him as the specialist rom-com man. And somehow he turns up the charm to make a film that's not even meant to be a rom-com feel like one. So I tip my hat to you, Hugh. You're a legend. I won't hear anyone say otherwise. I will defend you to the grave. You're a great man, a great actor. And it's been a pleasure doing this podcast. I hope you're listening somewhere.
Yes. Oh, I'd love
and Diggs, last thing I think is to you, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. The ride has been amazing, and it is emotional, isn't it? A little bit.
It is actually genuinely.
Yeah, I feel like we've lived on the other side of the world for the last 4 years, and we've been able to keep this like special bond because of Hugh Grant. It's fucking crazy.
It's fucking weird, isn't it? That is so funny, and it's great because I mean it's this little special thing, and now it's funny I'm thinking about this in a job context, but whenever you join a new job and they're always like, okay, say maybe one little fact about you, or you're sat in a circle or something, and they're like, oh, and what's your name and what's your special fact? I'm always just sort of like, hi, I'm Diggory, and I've watched every Hugh Grant film ever. Or when I've done interviews for jobs, and they'll always look at my CV, and at the bottom I've put, over the second page, I'm always like, oh, other things that I do. I'm like, I've got a Hugh Grant podcast. They're always like, they don't talk to me about the fucking job. They're just like, so what's your favourite Hugh Grant film? Like people, it's been such a fun staple of my life for so long, and I owe so much to this now. And like I say, it's been such a great way to stay in contact with you, and it's just been so much fun. So thank you, Hugh Grant, and thank you, Oscar Beardmore-Gray.
It's been a pleasure all the way. And now, like you say, if you ever have a moment where maybe as a listener as well, it's like, say an interesting fact about you. I've listened to every Hugh Grant film.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've done it. That is Hugh Grant's top 10 greatest films to date. Until next week, when we will, of course, be reviewing Wonka. Because it is almost time for Wonka. The journey doesn't end there. We will obviously we'll do his films as they come out. We'll update this board as we go. But for now, to date, these are the greatest Hugh Grant films ever made. From the two Hugh Grant experts, the only two on the planet, I'd say. But of course, by default, the best. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And thank you so much again, Oscar, for a great 4 years. Bye, everyone.
Bye.